Welcome to the online worship of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley for January 24th, 2021, with our theme today of Bridging the Divide. While we have turned an incredibly difficult corner in the political life of our nation, with the inauguration of a new president and vice president, we remain immersed in multiple crises. As the casualties of the COVID-19 pandemic continue to increase, already surpassing all the losses of American lives that were the result of all the wars of the last century combined, we simultaneously face the most politically divided nation that we have had since the Civil War. Our collective future literally hangs in the balance. So today, we will take a little time to begin considering how we might help to bridge the current divide by looking at the power of words. Our opening words today are adapted by the Unitarian Universalist minister, Kathleen McTeague. We come together in community to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's eyes and see their communion, a reflection of our own eyes and faces. This community of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Thank you for joining us today.
Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley. I'm Bruce Bryant, your worship associate for today's service. We gather together with our doubts as well as our convictions, with our fears and our hopes, with our failures and our aspirations, with our sorrows and our joys. Whether you're joining us today for the first time or you've been a member or friend for many years, we are glad you are here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, whatever your background, whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you are welcome. Now, as Robert Hurt comes forward, let us all say together from our homes the words for lighting our chalice. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, to share. And I invite you now to join with me as we say our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help our neighbors. To these ends, we covenant one with another.
And now, before we proceed to the rest of the service, I invite you to pause with me for a time of silence, as we have done each and every week that we've been in this long quarantine since last March. We want to join together to hold in our hearts and on our minds the millions of people now who are being adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, whether through the loss of life, loss of loved ones, loss of health, or the loss of financial stability and opportunity. Such a huge impact that it has been making on all of our lives. So let's take a moment to pause and acknowledge the deep concern and grief that we hold in response to all of this suffering that we are having to endure. Join me in the silence. May the spirit of life and love hold and comfort us, one and all. And now for our words of meditation today. They come from our Unitarian Universalist reading supplement, Lifting Our Voices, Readings in the Living Tradition. This is by one of my Unitarian Universalist colleagues, Wendy Bartell, who I had the pleasure of knowing when she served as a music leader at the UU Church in San Diego, First Church of San Diego. Now she serves with her wife in Schenectady, New York, as co-ministers. Her name is Wendy Bartell. We who dwell on the margins know about divisions, arbitrary and intentional, like land, like class, like culture. We make sharp borders around pieces of ourselves, and we blur the edges by being who we are, by expanding our circle. Beyond binaries, we multiply possibilities, languages, customs, practices, rituals, and ceremonies. Not one narrative, but multiple stories shared. Separation is illusion. Love transgresses borders between you, me, us, and them, between secular and sacred. We need trust to strengthen our connection. We must dare to cross from my world into yours, from yours into mine, until we begin to weave a tapestry of faith and wonder aloud, whose are we? What is a nation? Who can own the earth?
Sing
Today's words of reflection are from the Sufi mystic poet Rumi. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about.
Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. With these words by Rumi, we can start thinking differently about the challenge before us of bridging the huge divide among us. At this critical time in the life of our nation, and the entire planet for that matter, we are becoming increasingly aware of an existential crisis facing us all. Will what we held dear from the past survive? Will we as a people, however you might define that to be, survive the existential threats that lie before us? Yes, we have faced existential threats in the past, but today's threats look different. For one thing, we have a new virus that knows no national boundaries in whom it infects, knows no age, gender, or political affiliation, regardless of where you might look around the entire globe. Secondly, our planet itself is buckling under the weight of our collective footprint. Its incredible self-correcting natural cycles are being pushed to limits that may not be able to support much longer the continuation of our human species. The Earth undoubtedly will go on, but we may not go on with it if we fail to heed the signs of potential self-destruction with the pollution of our planet's biosphere through the technological civilizations that we have created for our own convenience. We know that our world has a long history of divisions among humans, arising from extended family tribes to nation states. With our rich diversity of unique languages and cultures, we have always had plenty to disagree about, plenty to criticize in others who do not seem like us, plenty to fight about and to fight over, plenty of enemies to fear. But in a very real sense, we have come to a collective precipice with the appearance of the COVID-19 virus as perhaps a manifestation of our planet's limits to sustain humanity in its current form. Now, of course, not everyone will agree with this assessment. Many people do not see what is happening in the world right now this way. Many are oblivious to the current threats. Many find other explanations for what these threats are and why. Individual humans and our communities were shaped by the language and culture of our tribal histories in the distant past, and in some parts of the world, they continue to do so today. But mainly, the diverse cultures of our world's nation states in their varying languages and practices shape who we are today and how we see the world. The meaning we find, the sense we try to make of it all, the ways we identify wrongdoing and right doing in the words translating from the poet Rumi. As the different countries and cultures have entered an industrial age, followed by a technological age, followed by this global communication age, many groups of people, what we used to think of as tribes, have had a hard time keeping up with all the dramatic changes and the pressures these changes have brought. The rise of political and religious fundamentalism, as we have become familiar with it, especially these last few decades, emerged largely in resistance to all of this global change. Many cultures have felt that their family structures and ways of life have been threatened by an outside entity in the form of social change, and they perceive it to be an enemy to their meaning-making traditions. We are still experiencing this around the world, and yes, in the United States too. As Americans who have for a long time prided ourselves and our nation for being a proverbial melting pot, many have given up the traditions and cultures of their family lineage in order to fit in. Others wanted to maintain those family traditions and cultures within the larger American way as best they could by staying close to their own kind. Much of the emergence of the religious right in the 1980s was a counterbalance to the influx of cultural diversity. It was an attempt to homogenize Americans around so-called traditional Christian family values while embracing the Christian prosperity capitalism that built on an earlier Christian tradition of a chosen few as a meritocracy entitled by God's favor. Over the years, though, some strains of Christian fundamentalism have turned toward a growing distrust of the American government as a threat to their cherished way of life, and eventually, as we've seen recently, as a literal enemy. The current phenomenon we've witnessed growing in these past years has now exploded into a trend of radicalization. The previous tendencies to cultural and religious conservatism have been radicalized in a portion of its adherents through divisive rhetoric, intentional disinformation, campaigns, and wild conspiracy theories. These were assisted in large part by talk radio, conservative so-called news outlets, and last but not least, the orchestrated influence of social media. This radicalization of language, these power of words, has resulted, unfortunately, in a cynical disbelief and resistance to facts. The liberal expansion of the truth into multiple simultaneous versions of the truth, according to social location, has now led, in some people, to an intentional denial of the value of truth itself, truth that is as provable fact. So in this field, where we want to meet with those who's experiencing the world in a way that's diametrically opposed to our own, how do we find common ground between our conflicting ideas of wrongdoing and right doing? The old ways of civility and rational discourse no longer apply with those who do not care to use reason, or facts. A worldview based in belief and insular social reinforcement is not one that is easily accessed by those with opposing viewpoints. But under all the words, my friends, under all the arguments and opposing viewpoints and beliefs, we are all still brothers and sisters in the family of humanity. At this critical time in our human history, we must not lose sight of this reality. And so we must meet our fellow humans, our fellow Americans with whom we view as so different from us, there in that field, the common ground of our shared humanity. And we must meet without depending on the words that can be weaponized to continue dividing us. Instead of trying to meet through the words of our minds, mind to mind, we have to be open and willing to meet there without words, heart to heart. Even when there are those among us who do not acknowledge our humanity, who might consider us to be instead an enemy to be fought and feared. Early on in this pandemic, I was questioned when I said that our congregation at UUCSV as a community of support was made for such a time as this. What I meant is that it is all well and good to have a faith community with whom you resonate when life is going along with its usual ups and downs. It can be immensely important, in fact, as we celebrate milestones like births and weddings and graduations, and when we have to navigate serious illness or the loss of a loved one to death. But when our nation and our world are undergoing a serious collective threat, that's when the rubber truly meets the road and the strength and integrity of all of our faith communities are tested. Can they help us to keep moving forward? Can they help us to rise to the challenge of these trying times? I personally believe in the strength and integrity of this congregation, in this faith community of Unitarian Universalists to help us get through these current crises. Beyond that, I also personally believe that our nation of the United States of America has the strength and integrity of democratic ideals to see us through these crises as well. As a nation, we are surely being tested and pushed to a new brink, but I believe we were made for a time such as this. We will find our way forward to creatively bridge the divides that currently separate us. It won't be easy, it will take time, but we can meet in a field beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, to see each other and hear each other without words, without sides, heart to heart, on the ground of our common humanity. May it be so.
As Robert Hurt extinguishes the flame, let us say together from our homes the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of our community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather to grow more generous in spirit and in action. We hope you will consider making an offering after today's service through our webpage, uushenandoah.org, which allows us to exercise that generosity of spirit for this self-supporting church and its many ministries, which continue while we are not able to physically be together. We invite you to join our church community at noon at our virtual post-service gathering for joys and concerns, followed by our coffee hour conversations in smaller breakout groups. The Zoom link is found on your UUCSV email. Thank you for joining us today.
And our closing words for today's service are adapted by the Unitarian Universalist minister Frederick Gillis. May the love which embraces all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us now and always. Thanks for being with us today for our service. Stay safe, stay strong, my friends, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Hang in there.